Good morning. It is Monday, February 13th, 2023, and this is DC Signal to Noise. Since we last talked, the Fed raised interest rates by 0.25%. The president delivered his 2023 State of the Union address. USDA delivered the February supply and demand report. The U.S. shot down wait a second. How many? Two. Well, wait. Four. Latest count is 4 UFOs. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. They are your 2023 Super Bowl champion. And I know that probably does not make pro farmer policy analyst Jim Wiesemeyer all that happy.
Well, they should thank the ref, too. I think.
Oh, come on. Philadelphia should be thanking the ref for making it through the championship game. That was not a catch in the championship game. If you're going to hold them accountable in the final game, hold them accountable in the last game, too.
I only go last game. You're only as good as your last game.
That's right. You're exactly right.
For the refs.
There's no way that Brown would have been that far off his route if he had.
I didn't like either team, so I didn't
care. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. I'm back home all week without traveling. Last week I had two great events, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to the Sugarcane League. A lot of friends there. Good attendance. I learned again, while I can drink with the Cajun, I can't keep drinking with the Cajun.
Right.
Okay. And then to the Curb meeting, that's also always well attended. Other good speakers. I had a good time, but I'm finally back home. So for 1 week, and next Monday, Tuesday, I'll be in the Ozarks to the Missouri pork producers. Can't wait to see my good friends there.
Very good. Very good. It's been a busy meeting season for you, hasn't it?
Very. But the most speeches I've ever done in January and early February. So time for a respite.
Well, I think it was a little bit of everybody was happy to get back and get into the face-to-face meetings. A lot of it happened a year ago. I know. Yeah. But boy, the crowds really came back to the meetings this year. There's no question.
Oh, definitely. And even the week before, Chip, I went down to North Carolina, the Blacklands, and a farmer by the name of Jimmy Latham just toured me around Bath. It was just a fantastic time. The Southerners are the best, I'll tell you, as far as making you feel comfortable.
What are you saying about Iowa nice? Come on now.
Oh, they're nice too, but I'm telling you, the Southerners have that extra panache. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So what have you learned? I know that all the messages that I continue to get back from you, there's a lot of conversation about crop insurance.
Oh yeah, that is the program, farm program, Chip, for the major commodities. And let's be honest, and they want to know, will that be negatively impacted in any way? And I say it's got bipartisan support. I don't see it, but attempts will be made. And some farmers, I think, interestingly, are telling me they wish that farm state lawmakers would look at really modifying, updating the crop insurance program and de-emphasizing Title I because it's just out of sync. It's just totally needs to be reformed because it's almost laughable, some of the reference price levels in it.
Jim, one of the things, this is how many farm bills for you that you're covering?
We've had 19 in the history of our great country. This will be my 11th one.
Yeah. And I think this is my 8th. Okay. One thing that you taught me early on was the farm bill is a snapshot of current economic conditions. And they try to write a farm bill that will provide some protection for farmers based on those current economic conditions. I don't think they had $6 corn, new crop corn, factored into writing a farm bill and using current farm economic conditions to write that safety net.
In 2018?
This year.
Oh, this
This year
year?
they didn't have it in 2018.
No, but they should. And yeah, the Title I needs to be flexible. And to do that, you're going to either have to switch for some funding from one program to the other
Yep.
and don't want to do that politically, or two, they have to get more funding from the budget committee or the appropriators, one of the two. And, look at the odds for that. So that's why I think some farmers, I think, are spot on, but, inertia in this town usually rules.
Yeah.
That they want to boost crop insurance because that's more malleable, Chip, as you
Yeah.
well know. That's more flexible to be changed each year.
Right.
And I'll tell you, wherever and I attend a lot of crop insurance meetings that
Yeah.
private companies give, it's meshed so closely now with marketing right now. That's how what a risk management tool, and that's where revenue assurance started anyway. I just think that we've got a dinosaur called Title I, and of course a farm state lawmaker will say that the 2018 farm bill largely succeeded. I don't think it did, because we had multiple years of ad hoc disaster programs, and you won't get that return in a year now, Chip, in which we've got a $31.4 trillion debt. Look at the facts. A CBO came out last week and said the first quarter, October through January, we spent $198 billion just servicing the debt, an increase of 41% from the previous fiscal year. That means you could be spending $600 billion just to service the debt.
Yeah.
And with interest rates rising, they're going to be hiked another 25 to 50 basis points over the next two meetings in March and May. So I mean, we've got to come to grips with farmer. The buzzword now in the speeches by others are saying, what's the expectations for the farm bill? Well, when you talk to farmers, the expectations is don't foul up the crop insurance program.
Right. Yeah, that's what we continue to hear. And Jim, the relative ineffectiveness of Title I is the reason that if we go all the way back to the middle of last year, I've been asking the question, is it going to be an evolutionary or a revolutionary bill? Because if it's not a revolutionary bill, Title I or the safety net program is going to remain ineffective.
Anemic.
Anemic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it would be revolutionary if you boosted the crop insurance program to make it even more powerful. But you've got parameters out there, Chip, that people, look at the farm groups investments in Title I, the lawmakers. So but I'm telling you, I think after watching 11 now out of the 19, I think the most smartest farmers I know who are whispering in my ear about that, I think that they're spot on. But this town doesn't like change when it comes to farm policy.
Right. Absolutely. What about on the conservation front? What are you hearing from farmers as you make your travels around the country? Is there a participation in USDA's climate smart farming practices and efforts there?
They're very leery, Chip, but I tell them what price pride. When Congress authorized and put in $20 billion additional funding for conservation programs, that's in law now, even before the Farm Bill was written. So conservation should not be a big debate, I think, in this coming conversation on a new Farm Bill. I had an Iowa farmer come up to me at the CURB meeting and say, our filter strips, it used to be a viable program that we were paid to keep filter strips in. Now the payment is so out of sync with the marketplace that why don't they increase that amount to keep it there? And I think that's a logical question, rather than the $5 or whatever they're paying now. It's just out of sync.
Okay. Let's change gears here just a little bit. State of the Union address. What did you make of it?
The president on rhetoric talked bipartisanship, but it was anything but. I think he missed on the Farm Bill. He missed a good opportunity to list the Farm Bill as one of those measures that could find
Right.
bipartisanship. I think he snookered the Republicans into yelling out when
Yeah.
he said. At least a venial sin that they
Yeah.
wanted to cut Medicare and
Right.
Social Security. And that's where you got the catcalls. And that's what they wanted to project. And
Yeah.
he said, let's finish the job more than a few times, which tells
8.
most people he's running for reelection.
Yeah. You know, and I agree. It does look like he is planning the run for reelection. But based on that latest poll, I think it was a Washington Post poll, there's not many Democrats that support what he has already done that want him to run again.
No, the goodly majority want another candidate, but that's not going to stop them, Chip. And you know, if you could, analyzing his speech, he talked very little about foreign policy. Very few, hardly a word on Israel. So that tells me his party is really not anti-Israel, but they're not pro-Israel
They're
as one
certainly
would think.
split.
Yes, they're split. And so he wanted to adhere to that dilemma. But if you added up all the programs that he more than referenced that he needed more spending for, they didn't put a dollar amount. He's just a spend happy president. So it was a forceful speech. I'm not going to deny that. He delivered it pretty good. And it was a strategy to really box Republicans into a corner. Like, I'll show you my budget in March, you show me yours, things like that. Well, okay, that'll last for about a month, but then reality is going to set in again.
Gotcha. Okay. Just a reminder to everyone, if you would like to participate in the conversation, or if you have a question for Jim, then go to the comments tab on your screen, type it in there, and we'll try to address it before we wrap up. Let's talk about the balloons, or whatever you want to call them, Jim. It was a week ago Saturday that they shot down the first one. Then over the weekend, 3 more, objects, whatever you want to call them, were shot down. One over Canada, one over Lake Huron, and where was the fourth one? I don't remember right now.
In Canada.
Yeah. Yep.
I can't even remember, but there's been 4. And now China's saying that they spotted an object.
Right.
Too. Now, whether one can believe that, here we go.
Okay. Well, I don't have trouble believing that because of the hesitancy to shoot down the first balloon.
Yeah.
The reason that they were so hesitant to shoot down the first balloon is because we probably got them over China.
Yeah.
So what do you make of it?
Their official explanation of the first balloon that we shot, waited too long to shoot down, is now a bald lie. And now they're more than embarrassed. So they're worried about the world, outlook for them, Chip. I'll tell you the truth. We need somebody, hopefully President Biden, to address the nation on what's going on. Right now, it looks like that they've left it up to Majority Leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, and that's no person. He's politics 24/7. And so we don't know the countries of these final 3 objects, if you will. I think they are ruling out unidentified, that there's a country attached to each of these. The other part is just silly stuff on the alien stuff. We need some answers, and we're not getting them. And now they love to point out, Schumer loves to point out, well, in the Trump administration, there were 3 and they didn't even know it. Well, that's politics again, But a question should be asked, why? they didn't identify them. And then what are you doing for a self-correction on this one? And they're just and they're correcting it now. That's probably why we're identifying more objects right now, because they've set their radar lower.
Yeah, right.
And in the
Exactly.
southern part of the world too.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Gary made this point. He said, Gary Rasmussen, he says the flight path of the fighter jet that shot down UFO in Lake Huron covered 2 military shipbuilding yards on both sides of the Bay of Green Bay, one in Marionette, Minnesota, and one in Sturgeon Bay, Marionette, Wisconsin, the other in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. I mean, it's pretty obvious they're looking for information.
And to me, I don't have the proof yet, but some of the people I respect are more than whispering to me this is a joint Russia-China testing of the U.S. And you know, we're not. I mean, look, Chip, this goes all the way back to the origins of COVID. We really didn't slap China for opening their borders to send people out of China during the early days of COVID, and locked people from coming in. They never got sanctioned for that. So they've been testing us ever since. And this is why you're seeing it from our pell-mell rush out of Afghanistan last June, et cetera. And I'm being fair-minded here. This is, this calls for a presidential comment on what in the heck is going on.
Yeah, it certainly does. Does it call for more sanctions on China?
Yes. Yes. Okay. And President Biden said last week that this should not significantly negatively impact U.S.-China relations. Well, our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, canceled a trip to China that was designed in part to at least get a base in our relationships. It's already affected the relationship. So they're trying to gloss over this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anybody is wondering why we're talking about this, China is kind of an important trade partner with us. There's your agricultural connection to it. Okay. Just pointing out.
We've got a note here. Please educate us on Farm Report. It's what we're here for. Well, these U.S.-Chinese relations are key, because if this were to significantly blow up, then more than a few farmers would want reparation payments again, like soybean growers, et cetera. So no. This is just not a production-oriented show. We have to look at all the links involved in policy.
Yeah. Appreciate the feedback, though.
Yes, absolutely. Farm Bill progress, Russell Richardson asked on. I think that they're grinding their heels on this one. We had a Senate Ag Committee hearing last week. Oh, it was good. Nothing new came out of it. It's the same topic. So they're gonna go the House on the listening tour, and then a hearing coming up next month, Chip. They're going to begin their hearings in the House. The Senate has already begun the hearings. The Senate, most people think, will have a bill yet this year because of the experience of Senate Chairwoman Debbie Stabenow. So I just hope they get these listening sessions out of the way, because they're going to write the farm bill they want anyway. Right. Let's be honest. Right. And we know what the topics are. So get to work. Get to work and write it.
Okay. So we had a conversation last week with House Committee Chairman Glenn Thompson. And I made the mention to him that it sounds like the Senate has made some significant progress in writing its version of the bill. And he very flatly said, listen, the House is going to write the bill this time.
I like the chairman, but both chambers write a bill, and they're going to need a bipartisan effort, because you will not have a final farm bill if the Senate, Democrats in this case, don't go along. And the two biggest issues are the food and nutrition funding, where the Democrats will keep insisting on more funding and no onerous working requirement. And on the Republican side, they want to improve Title I and do not negatively impact the crop insurance program. Now, there are many other issues on that, but let's get it going. Oh, I don't hear you, Chip.
What I'm saying is they're going to get some of the information that they need this week in the 10-year baseline numbers.
Yes, the Congressional Budget Office on Wednesday releases it, and the wonks will go all over the report, seeing what's in that baseline to be spent on the Farm Bill. And I think their last estimate, CVO, was a 10-year baseline of over $1 trillion. Now, that sounds like a lot of money, and it is. So we'll have to see how they do it by by section, Chip, the commodity programs, conservation, food and nutrition, etc. A little over 80% is on food and nutrition. So we're fighting over that last 15% as far as what comes out, unless the chair leaders of the House and Senate Ag Committee get additional funding from the budget committees. And although that's unlikely, you still can't rule it out until they make that declaration. But the baseline is important because that sets your parameters as far as how much they can spend.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's talk about how much we can spend, because we've still got the debt ceiling to deal with, don't we, Jim?
Yes, it looks like either mid to late June, no later than July, we're going to have to get this thing settled. Republican leaders are saying no, they want to have some cuts relative to signing off on either a debt limit increase or a debt limit suspension, ceiling suspension. They have said again, no cuts to Medicare and Social Security. But everything else is on the table. Now, that's a clear signal that in the future, once they have to deal with the debt, Chip, farm programs will be included in how much.
Yeah.
Lawmakers usually take the easy way out on deficit reduction. It's usually across the board cuts of a certain percentage. Right. I fully expect that. I just don't know when.
Well, if that happens, Jim, what does it mean for the farm bill spending? Because the last time we went through this, it was a 10% across the board or whatever the percentage was.
Yeah, I think it was about 6.5 or whatever. Yeah, on any payment. Now, recall that CRP contracts are contracts, and they're not they're not impacted, but it will hurt.
Yeah,
it will hurt.
Yep. No question. No question. Here's one coming in late. Any thoughts on fertilizer impact for spring planting? We talked about it quite a bit on Friday afternoon on AgriTalk, but the bottom line is we've got nitrogen prices that are coming down. It seems that NH3, anhydrous ammonia, is leading the way to the downside. I wouldn't anticipate a lot of additional pressure on anhydrous prices at this time. Urea prices have pretty much locked up with anhydrous. And then you've got the UAN, 28% in particular, that seems to be way out of whack on its pricing and is priced too high. Phosphates are okay. The trend is still down, but most of that work has already been done. So a lot of the focus is on anhydrous. I don't think that it's going to have a major impact on the decision, what the acreage mix is going to be. For the most part, that decision has been made. There is some potential for swapping in the Northwest production areas, looking at North Dakota, South Dakota. There's some potential for swapping in those areas, but I don't think that there's going to be a major swing towards soybeans or to corn from what we had a year ago. And remember, we had a big swing towards soybeans in North Dakota a year ago. I think that's probably gonna stick around. But Jim, the National
Cotton Council.
Yeah, go ahead and talk about
Cotton
that.
acres down 17% in their survey. And their survey over the years has clearly gotten the direction, and they've been fairly accurate. And they said cotton producers intend to plant 11.4 million acres. Again, down 17%. That's largely due to the price ratios between
Yeah.
alternative crops. We're talking corn and soybeans, Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah. 11.4 million acres is too much. It's going to be south of 10 million acres.
Wow.
There's just no incentive to plant cotton. Unless you want to lose money. The only reason that you'd plant cotton is because you got all the equipment to do it. So you're going to keep some acres. You're going to keep some acres if you are geared up for it, but nobody's going to get in the business. It's just that there's way better potential out of crops like sorghum, corn, soybeans. There's much better opportunities there. So I would anticipate that 11.4 million acres is the top side of possibilities, and it can be under 10.
But that means eventually, with that reduction in acres, Jim,
Yeah.
that you could have a pretty volatile cotton market.
Oh, you will.
Ahead.
Yeah. You absolutely will. The flexibility of the Southern grower has created the volatility in the cotton market. It's not going to go away it's not going away next year, the year after that, or the year after that.
No.
It is here to stay for cotton guys. It's pretty impressive.
Before I forget, a lot of farmers ask me, has USDA made a decision on the remainder 25% of the ERP payment? Remember, it was limited to 75%. They have not said anything. Frankly, I think they're waiting to see how the ERP phase 2, which is the worst implementation of any program I've seen in a number of years, goes. So no decision on that, and no decision on the 2022 disaster programs. We're just waiting. Maybe Secretary Vilsack, because he likes to announce certain things when he goes out and speaks, and he'll be speaking a couple times this week in North Carolina and to a couple of other groups. So we could get something this week, but I wouldn't count on it.
All right, let's go rapid fire here to wrap things up. We mentioned earlier that the 10-year baseline numbers are coming, but we've got some economic numbers that are coming this week that are going to be very important in the Fed's decision-making process.
Consumer price index that could actually see a little uptick, Chip, based on industry analysts. Now, they're not always right. And so that'll be a determination, at least the initial signal of the Federal Open Market Committee meeting, both in March and May. But the Federal Reserve officials, including Chairman Jerome J. Powell, has consistently stated that they have more than one increase in rates coming out, and it's going to be a while, undeterminate time at the terminal rate, whatever that is, before they even think about pivoting and going lower. The Fed's current numbers show 2024. The financial traders are beginning to actually believe the Fed now, so that's put pressure on financial markets.
Yes, it certainly has. Okay. Tomorrow is the deadline for Mexico to respond on the GMO issues.
Yeah, and that's where the U.S. has done a very good job calling Mexico to task, both at the White House level and USDA, U.S. Trade Representative's Office, the corn growers, and other groups. So the message has been loud and clear. And if they don't, if we don't like their message, then USTR will begin the process of clamping down on them relative to a USMCA. But as Vilsack told Mexico, where else are you going to buy the corn that you need? They typically buy 10 million tons of U.S. corn. A portion of that is food grade corn. But we can't let this go, Chip, because that would be a precedent for other countries to do the same. That it's not based on any science whatsoever.
There are some in the market that say, who are we to tell Mexico what they can and can't buy?
It's called USMCA, that their commitments there, that it must be based on science. And that's why it's a North American market. And it's tied into domestic politics in Mexico, Chip, because Obrador, their president, comes from the southernmost part of the country. That's where the majority of tortillas are made. So it's a sop to the tortilla manufacturers.
Exactly. And here's the other thing. This would be a federal policy that would be pushed through the private importers in Mexico. It's not like there's some state grain agency in Mexico
Yes.
that's doing all the buying. Okay. These are private companies that are bringing in US product and converting it into whatever they need it. The government there would be telling them what they can and can't buy. Every importer of feed and white corn wants U.S. corn.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that.
It's
So,
this precedent.
so to you that are saying that, it would be like President Biden saying, "Yeah, you know what? No, we're not going to export corn into Europe or whatever."
Nip it in the bud right away. It's very
Exactly.
similar to this coming Supreme Court ruling no later than June on the Proposition 12, well, relative to California wanted to dictate the marketing practices and the growing practices of hogs. That's how critical it is, because if California were to win that, then that's your template for the other production agriculture groups to come at agriculture.
Exactly. I got one last one that I want to throw in here from Tanner. He says, last week Chip had NCBA on pushing policy for traceability and protections for private tag companies. I brought up if the NCBA would push for cost sharing if we mandated traceability. He says they kind of glazed it over, which might be right. But as a PSA for fellow producers, USDA already has free RFID tags available upon request. So thank you, Tanner, for that. Appreciate that. Jim, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here, buddy. I'll give you 15 seconds on last items.
Well, first, we need an announcement on what's going on these objects. Two, the Farm Bill continues in the hearing and listening phase. Senate's expected to complete their bill yet this year. House isn't. And the third one is watch those inflation or disinflation reports later this week.
Excellent. All right. Today on AgriTalk, we've got Machinery Pete and Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa will be joining me this afternoon. Darren Fry from Water Street Solutions. Have a great week, everybody. Keep watching for those signals.